If you've been lifting for over 6 months, then you're probably aware of the science-based lifting community and then the people who don't really agree with a lot of that. So I'm going to explain to you the good and bad on both sides and what you need to understand in order to maximize your gains. So let's start off with the science-based lifting community. A lot of the stuff that they say is correct, sort of, but they do tend to overcomplicate stuff and overcomplicate certain movements to the point where you're just not able to perform the exercise with the max effort that you were able to on like a less complicated exercise, if that makes sense. So pretty much the main con in the science-based lifting community is that they tend to overcomplicate movements that don't really need it. Because at the end of the day, they're kind of fighting over if you're natural like 0.2 pounds of muscle in the year. And then they're not, for some movements, you're not even able to perform it at like max intensity because of how strange the setup is. So you can take those 0.2 pounds off the table, right? Because the effort that you put in matters most of the time more than the exercise. A pro is that a lot of them do know what they're talking about and they're good at analyzing certain studies and kind of progressing our knowledge as a whole. So there is a lot of good stuff to take away, but they do tend to overcomplicate stuff a lot. On the other side, a big thing that I love that the science-based lifting community doesn't really touch on too much is training intensity. Because at the end of the day, that's one of the most important things if you want to maximize your gains. And a lot of newer science-based lifters, especially as of recently, don't train near as hard as they should be, and they think that they are. But a con of the non-science-based lifting community, who doesn't really pay attention to the science and lifts like 80s bodybuilders, is that they lift like 80s bodybuilders. Like there's a lot of new stuff that they can incorporate into their program that isn't overcomplicated, that can make it 1,000 times better, but they just don't, because they don't want to look at the new stuff. They want to look at the old golden era of bodybuilding and kind of copy everything that we were doing 40 years ago, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but they do train hard. So there's pros and cons on both sides. I definitely encourage you to do your research and figure out like what stuff is overcomplicated versus what stuff you can incorporate, and make sure to train hard, maximize your training intensity. It's going to be one of the most important things, and follow me for more. If you're ever confused on something, shoot me a DM.